Hello, everyone. It's great to see a full house. Welcome to the 2024 Alexandria Democratic Committee City Council primary debate. Thank you so much for being here. Happy 34 felony counts day to those who celebrate. I'm not going to go on and on. I just have a couple of housekeeping things to run through. First of all, we are very grateful to our city council candidates who are here. We have 11. We're waiting on the last one. Hopefully she will be here soon. But these candidates have participated in so many of these forums. Running for office in Alexandria is really demanding. Every organization has their own event. I've joked before with some of you that it's a 40-hour-a-week job just to run. So our expectations of these candidates is really high. You've probably heard a lot of answers to a lot of your burning questions many times if you've been tuned in and reading the news and everything. We're going to try to shake that up a little bit and ask some different questions. And we hope that these guys will be a little entertained by our questions rather than answering the same things again and again. So bear with them. Let's cheer them on. These are all our Democrats. We are certainly going to have a lot of opinions. On June 19th, we will come together and support the 6 from this slate of candidates right here who will represent all Democrats in the general election in November. Yes? Okay. I'd like to introduce our moderator for the night, who is Clark Mercer. I know many of you know Clark. Clark is a former ADC chair, which is pretty exciting. He's also a native son of Alexandria, went through the school system here, is raising a family here, and his kids are also in the school system. He has been, I'm looking at this here, he just has a lengthy resume of service to Alexandria and to the Commonwealth. He served on the city's Parks and Rec Commission, on the school board's budget advisory committee. He's coached the Titans soccer team, and our city government has worked very closely with Clark, first as chief of staff to Democratic Governor Ralph Northam, and now as the director of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So Clark is a very qualified moderator who also has skin in the game, and we're very appreciative that he's here. The last thing I will say is in your seats, you're going to see a pledge to vote card. The pledge to vote card is from the Alexandria Democratic Committee, from us. We are an organization uniquely positioned to provide you with opportunities to get involved in this 2024 election. If you think you're already involved and you don't need to fill out that card, nope. This helps us build a list of people who are interested in canvassing so that we can reach out to you for that. If you would like to text, we can do that. If you would like to do voter registration, write that in. Let us know what you want to do. Fill out your card, leave it in your chair, hand it to somebody on the way out. It will help you be directly connected at the local level to things you can do that will help all the way up the chain federally. And when you sign up with us, you're not inundated with emails, so that's exciting because we're local. We're not the big guys. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. Let's have a big round of applause for Clark. He's going to keep us on time.
All right, thank you, Sandy. And let's start with a big round of applause for Sandy and the Alexandria Democratic Committee. Thank you. It is a testament to our local Democratic Committee that we have such a great group of candidates vying for the Democratic nomination to run for City Council. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, or the candidates will, about what that means to be a Democratic candidate vying for this nomination. But quick, let's go through the rules. You're here to listen to the candidates, not to me. Thank you for coming. This is being recorded, so it'll be shared with the public after tonight's event. There will be opening statements. Everyone will have a minute for opening statements, and the opening statements will go in this order. Sandy used a random number generator for every question that's asked, so the order will never be the same. We're going to have 3 policy-related questions, and I will let you know your order when I tee that off for each of the policy issues, and we'll round this out with some closing statements. As Sandy mentioned, early voting is underway. We have a long period for early voting in the Commonwealth, and you don't have to have an excuse now to vote absentee, and that is because of good Democratic policy that was enacted a couple years ago into law. And the folks that make it out here and are the Democratic nominees, Election Day will be a state holiday, and that was also because of good Democratic policy that was made into law. We eliminated Lee Jackson Day was a state holiday, and eliminated Lee Jackson Day and replaced it with Election Day as a holiday. So when Democrats win, good things happen. So for opening statements here, a little bit of a twist, and we'll start with Mr. Harris. Same question to all of you. What does Alexandria need the most, and what makes you the best candidate to deliver it? James?
Yes, hello. So for me, one of the biggest things that I feel like Alexandria needs, obviously, especially in this position, is good leadership. One of the things that I feel like makes me most qualified is two things. One, the fact that I started my work in our city as a community organizer, working on the ground, organizing with folks, organizing around our shared values as Alexandrians, bringing people together and delivering the things that they need most. Also, we need people who are going to be able to lead in the face of adversity. One of the things that I've done a lot of is organize, whether it be around our BIPOC business grant. When the city was sued in reference to that, I was the first person to step up as the ADC deputy chair. I stepped up, got a resolution passed for us to stand in solidarity with black business owners or BIPOC business owners, whether it be Sunday voting, something that actually got rejected in our city. I stepped up and organized with a bunch of churches after it was rejected to give people who are working class folks and people in marginalized communities an opportunity to be able to get out and vote. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Jacinta Green. Would it be helpful? Do you all want me to repeat the question before? No, you got it? Okay.
All right, thank you, Clark. So, hello everyone, Jacinta Green, school board member. I have been here in Alexandria for 21 years, and I tell this story often on the campaign trail. When I moved here 21 years ago, someone told me that Alexandria would be the best place for me to live because it would be more affordable than anywhere else in the Northern Virginia area. That proved not to be true 21 years ago. It is still not true today. What we need most here in Alexandria is safe, affordable, and workforce housing. As a school board member, we deal a lot with teacher retention. And most of our teachers do not live in Alexandria. So they're commuting over an hour to get to work each way. If we had safe, affordable workforce housing for them, think of how we could build morale. Think of how we could make retention better. The same with our police officers, the same with our firefighters. We have a huge retention issue. Our public servants who work here deserve to live here as well. So I think that first and foremost, affordable, safe housing and workforce housing is what we need most.
Thank you. Sarah Bagley.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Bagley. I'm currently serving in my first term on City Council, and I think what Alexandria needs most is all of you. We have an incredible city full of educators, full of people who work for our government, full of people who work for nonprofits, full of people who work in our businesses and adjacent industries, and we need to tap deeper into our own resource, our greatest resource, which is us. We saw through recent projects in the city that people have, is that a minute? Oh, that was 30 seconds. That was a minute? Keep going, keep going. So we saw during some recent projects during my first term that people care passionately about this city. And so what I want to do in a second term is build on the experiences that I brought. I run an affordable housing nonprofit in my day job. I've advocated for gun violence prevention at the state, local, and federal level. I have volunteered with the Alexandria Democratic Committee since the day I arrived in town. I want to bring all of those issues and all of those skills together and bring in all of you, because we are a city full of talented, passionate people that can say yes to things, that can find things that we agree on and want to say yes on together.
Thank you. All right, Jesse O'Connell.
So, Clark, what I think the city needs most is optimism. I think we need people that are excited about the city, that are proud of the progress that we've made, and are open to looking at things and saying maybe and trying some stuff out. You know, the challenges that Alexandria is facing are challenges that come from our success. We're having a housing crisis because people want to live here. We're having school capacity challenges because families are committing to our schools and they want to be in them. You know, we're having debates about development because people want to build things here and bring their businesses here. These are symptoms of our success, not evidence of our decline. And I think we need people that are open-minded and optimistic and want to get to work solving those challenges. Because to be clear, we have to solve those challenges. We shouldn't tolerate them. But they are problems that we can tackle together if we bring energy and excitement. And anybody that's met me for more than 10 seconds knows that that is who I am. I'm optimistic. I solve problems. I really like engaging on this stuff. And I think that's what the city needs right now.
Thank you. Jimmy Lewis.
Thank you, Clark. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jimmy Lewis. I live on the city's West End, and I believe what we need right now is really attention to detail, because as you've heard from the others here on stage, we've got a lot of challenges, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's growing our economic base to reduce our burden on taxpayers, whether it's how you get from one side of the city to the other side of the city in less than 45 minutes during rush hour. None of these are simple problems that we can solve on ourselves, and none of these are simple problems that we're going to solve overnight. But what we do need is an attention to detail to look at how all of these problems are interconnected and how we work through the details together to solve each one of these issues, because what works on one side of the city is not going to work on the other side. The type of commercial development we need in a place like North Potomac Yards or Eisenhower Valley is a very different type of economic development than what we need to foster in Old Town and in Del Rey. So I think what we really need as a city is an eye for detail, because we have to do those big things right as well as those little things right, because that pothole that wrecks your car's suspension, that matters. That sidewalk you trip in, that matters.
Thank you. Jonathan Husky.
Hi there. It's great to be with Alexandria Democrats on quite a day, right? And before we get rolling, I just want to say we are all on the same team here. And at the other end of this primary is a general election where, again, we're going to have to fight to defend democracy and defend our people from a Republican Party that is out of control. And so let's just say, all together now, are we going to fight like hell in November? Yes. Are we going to win? Yes. All right. So everybody on this stage is a fierce fighter for justice, okay? And we together, and we with you, are going to win in November. I don't have any more time. Alexandria's greatest need is to pay for the things that bring economic opportunity for all. And I have a 20-year record of doing just that. Thanks.
Thank you. John Chapman.
Good evening. Alexandria, just to be straightforward and blunt, Alexandria needs to make sure that we are economically sustainable. Over the last decade, we've gone from a 60% reliance on residential taxes to 80%. And we know as a city that's not sustainable. We have empty storefronts that we need to fill. We have parts of the city that we need to better plan for economic and commercial activity. But that can only be done through planning. We can't hope that a magic bullet is going to come along or a magic company is going to come along and settle here. We have to plan out areas of the West End. We have to plan out areas of Eisenhower Valley. And we have to look at what we're doing now in Old Town, whether it's Southeast Quadrant or North Old Town or the middle of the city, and see, is there an opportunity for business to thrive in those neighborhoods? Neighborhoods that also need to be responsive to the residents in them. And so as we plan as a city, we need leaders that understand the history of this city, understand how to operate local government. As a four-term council member, I can do that. As a fourth-generation Alexandrian, I'm ready to see this community continue to evolve, not only just for residents that are here, but also businesses.
Thank you. All right. Abdel Abnoubi.
Thank you, Clark. What our city needs is someone who deeply understands the needs of our city, who's been involved and who listens, and who has a track record of solving problems to ensure that everyone thrives in our city. And that means improving our transportation system. That means properly well-funded schools. That means tackling our housing affordability and tackling our unbalanced tax base. Look, I grew up in a dictatorship. I left for opportunity and freedom. My very presence on this stage is a testament to how policy can transform lives, and something I really understand and want to do through enacting policy. I've done it on the school board by raising educator pay, giving them collective bargaining rights, and adding mental health supports for our students. And I've been involved in the community as PTA president, as rec soccer coach volunteer, as appointee by city council. But I'm also trained to solve problems as an engineer, and I have over a decade in transportation professional experience. And I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and solve our community's problems.
Oh, Kanik, do you need another microphone there? There we go.
Need to turn it on.
There we go.
Can you repeat the question? No, I'm just playing. I think immediately what Alexandria needs is a little bit more space up here because we're a little squished. But I think one of the things that I'm proud of is that my entire time here in Alexandria has been one of service. So when I got here, I started working in the school system, seeing all the issues that were going on in the schools, advocating for families. When I got plucked by the Medicaid, by the private sector to work in Medicaid, I was working with some of the most vulnerable communities in the entire region. And what we have to do a lot of times is look at our policies through the most vulnerable within our community, because when we're protecting those folks, we're protecting everyone. So I have a really strong track record in terms of leadership from even before when I was on the council, being the chair of the Economic Opportunities Commission, being the president of Tenants and Workers United, building coalitions, and then once on council, I continued that, doing work around communication, leading the census efforts to get a complete count so that our community gets the money that we deserve. And I can't really tell how my time is because I don't know your sign isn't big enough. But working on transportation, education, and of course housing. So looking forward to chatting some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirk McPike.
Dog parks? No. What Alexandria needs more of is to be bolder about living out our democratic progressive values. We need to take the challenges we have as a community and look at them through the lens of the values that define our party, the party of opportunity, the party of equality and inclusion. When we look at the challenges that we face a housing crisis, we face a climate crisis, we face difficulties with our city budget, we face challenges with our schools and our infrastructure. And I'm proud of the work that this current council, which you elected me to, has done on each of those items. We've approved hundreds of new affordable homes across the city, reformed our laws to make it easier to build the housing we need, and we created the Office of Climate Action to work with our staff and our city leaders and the environmental movement to address some of those challenges as well. We only have a minute, so that's a quick summary, but I'm very proud of the work we're doing. There's more that needs to be done. If we live out our values and put them forward, we can do these things that we need to keep our city moving forward.
Thank you. And Charlotte Schurer.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Charlotte Schurer. I'm a 13-year resident of Alexandria and also the only candidate up here with judicial branch experience. So I have been a city magistrate, and as a magistrate, I always make a joke about that. I say to people, do you know what the difference between a judge and a magistrate is? And they'll look at me and say, no. And I say, well, a judge gets to sleep and play golf. So at any one time, right now, for instance, a magistrate is on duty here in the city of Alexandria. It doesn't matter if it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 5 p.m. at night. So magistrates do emergency protective orders. For instance, they do search warrants. I would have detectives come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, we need a search warrant or the evidence is going to disappear in a few hours. And I would still have to say, okay, but do you have probable cause? So I want to bring that clear-eyed approach with me to City Council as your next City Councilor. I think that evidence is important. We consider evidence as a magistrate. For instance, according to the Metropolitan Washington Council on Governments, the city of Alexandria has built 15,000 units of new housing in 5 years, but only 7% of that has been affordable. We need to address that. We need to take the time to address that. That is the evidence-based.
Time. Thank you. Okay. Those were our 1-minute introductions. Now each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question on the economy. So we're going to talk about economic issues, and there'll be 2 questions. So the first group that's going to answer, again, we used a random number generator. So Jonathan Husky, Jesse O'Connell, Jimmy Lewis, Charlotte Schurer, Kanik Ogwari, and John Chapman will answer the first question. And then the second question will be answered by Kirk McPike, Abdel, Kevin, Sarah, and Jacinta. Okay, so the first question, it was referenced earlier. Over 80% of the taxes generated in Alexandria come from residential property taxes. That's a lot. We'd like to hear from you, starting with Jonathan, on a specific idea of how you will diversify the tax base. And a couple things here. One, I was in Richmond for a long time. We all want more money from Richmond and the federal government. So take that answer off the table. We assume everyone's going to ask Richmond for more money. And this is a proactive question moving forward. What will we do to diversify the tax base, not talk about economic development opportunities that have not come Alexandria ways? What are we going to do moving forward to diversify that tax base further? And we'll start with Jonathan, and then we'll go to Jesse, Jimmy, Charlotte, Kanik, and John. Jonathan, 2 minutes.
Sure, thank you. I always start a trend by sitting down. So yeah, here we go. So I work in taxes. I know that handouts to billionaires is not good fiscal policy, and it doesn't raise revenue for our city. It was a financial risk that we should never have taken, and it was anything but progressive, and that's why I'm sitting here today. To be sure, the intentions were noble. We thought it would rain down revenue on us for years and years and years, but we would still be here talking about it because we are in trouble now. There isn't the revenue to meet the budget needs. So what are we going to have to do in the long term is get more commercial and retail activity in the city, and we're all going to work on that together, and that's going to be a process that all of us are part of. And there are signs that we can do that, and we know that the Potomac Yard area is an incredibly valuable place. So it will be, we'll be able to get there. We can do some things to raise revenue now. We may need to raise conveyance taxes. We might need to raise some some sales taxes on short-term rental properties. But no. The only long-term solution here is to change things in Richmond, and this council had decided it's not their job and it's not their problem, and instead spent $700,000 when there was good legislation there to go for on the arena rather than fighting for us. I'm going to do better by us. I think we could have used that money in a lot of ways in Richmond and at home. I'll put progressive values to work on this council. Together, we're going to raise the revenue we need, and we're not going to need billionaires to do it.
Okay, thank you. Jesse O'Connell.
Yeah, Clark, I see a couple great opportunities here for us. I think one, it starts with, we know that Alexandria is a destination city, right? We have a lot of opportunities still around events. 71% of our consumption taxes are paid by people that don't live here, right? That's $54 million that comes into our revenue from visitors. And I think it's something that we do well. It's something that we're known for. And we have opportunities to actually expand that, right? And it's not just the ones that we know about in Old Town and Art in the Ave and Del Rey, but we have tremendous opportunities to do stuff in the West End with the communities that are out there. I think the second way we can grow our commercial tax base is through workforce talent, right? This was the idea in getting Amazon here and bringing Virginia Tech to the city. I have maintained that Virginia Tech was actually the prize of those two in the long run. We have fantastic partnerships between ACPS and Northern Virginia Community College and George Mason, and we need to leverage those more to show employers that our city is going to deliver the kind of employees and talent that they need to really thrive here. So I think that's a huge thing that we can do to actually attract businesses to our area. I think the third thing that we can do is actually to lean into the smaller business model, but to focus on retail that builds communities, right? When you look at the really successful local businesses like Fiberspace, like Stitch Sew Shop on King Street, like Crooked Beat Records and Rome Music School in Del Rey, these are local businesses that are predicated on bringing people together and sort of having them be in the business and spend time in the business and make connections with others. I think being a community that is known for that type of retail and thinking about how we can do it outside of just Old Town and Del Rey, right? We need neighborhood level business associations across the city that can foster these type of opportunities. And I think when we pursue things like that, we can grow that commercial tax base and change the revenue mix over time in a way that isn't relying on some of those traditional tools like going out and getting extra grant money.
Okay, thank you. Jimmy Lewis.
So I think over the course of this, in a city where we're constantly talking about affordable housing, 82% of our tax revenue coming from our residents is part of that problem. That's continuing to drive the issue. We know there are lots of people in the city that are one tax increase away from being priced out of a home they've owned for 20 years. So we have to grow that base. And I think for us, it's a three-pronged strategy over the short, medium, and long term. Over the short term, I think we need to make sure that we continue and look at our robust investments in Visit Alexandria and AEDP. We know that both of those organizations are already delivering us 600-700% returns on investment from what they're doing, and that is what's driving a lot of that consumer tourist dollars that are coming to the city that aren't our tax dollars, that are fostering our businesses and paying for things here. So I think doubling down on those investments that we know are working and are paying dividends is critical in the short term. Over the medium term, it is fostering and growing our local businesses. Look, everyone in this whole city was excited when we saw that Port City won Best Beer in the World. How do we get other businesses in other sectors to win those types of awards that are also calling Alexandria home? How do we grow the retail, or how do we address the vacant retail space on King Street and Mount Vernon Avenue? Those aren't good looks for us if we're a consumer-facing, tourist-focused city. We have to make sure that we have retail in there. So is that a retail incubator that gets people sort of the ability to get cash flow, build clients? Because there are bureaucratic challenges to getting a business opened in the city. There's a permitting process and challenges like that, so we have to make sure that people aren't paying commercial rents while they're trying to get a business open. And finally, it is those large sites, you know, North Potomac Yards, Eisenhower Valley, the Potomac River power generation sites. Those are really our major opportunities to get those big dollar investments, those big commercial growth things that we need. We did design Virginia Tech to come here as an innovation center. How can we continue that innovation? How can we continue to foster the growth of innovative intersectional technologies that enable the future?
Thank you. Charlotte, sure.
Sorry, thank you. So I think that's a great question. And I know that Mr. O'Connell talked about optimism being the most important quality or characteristic that we need here in Alexandria, and that is certainly true, but we also need something else, and that is a clear-eyed assessment of the costs and benefits of any particular project that we're bringing here to Alexandria. The arena project was defeated 2 months ago, but it's also important to consider the opportunity cost of that arena. So Mr. Leonsis, according to the Washington Post, did approach the city last April initially, and about 8 months of negotiations occurred where it was trying to land the deal. But it was very clear that the hard questions were not asked before the announcement. It should have been clear, looking at a map, that the arena project was not the right project for Alexandria. So we spent a year pursuing that when we could have been pursuing a technology corridor, the completion of that technology corridor, Microsoft HQ2, Virginia Tech Innovation Center, and then right there, it is the perfect spot for a technology firm such as Microsoft or NVIDIA. But those opportunity costs are something real that need to be considered. Also this too, that the commercial tax burden is high and it's getting higher. That's something else we need a clear-eyed assessment of. The bid has been in the news very recently, and there has been some discussion about changing the goalposts essentially for considering the bid. Now, whether you're for the bid or against the bid, it does increase commercial tax burden. And I think that for these small businesses on Mount Vernon, on King Street, they're beating heart of Alexandria. We are not making life easier for them. As a city councilor, I want to go to these businesses. I've knocked on 7,000 doors since January. I want to continue that. I want to go up and down King Street, up and down Mount Vernon, talk to these small business owners, let them know, hey, what can we do for you? I don't think there is enough outreach. I think we take our small businesses for granted here, and we spend too much time with AEDP trying to look for, if you'll forgive the sports metaphor, the big score.
Time.
Small businesses are our beating heart.
Thank you. Kanik?
I'm going to stand because I wasn't kidding when we're a little squished in here. So I think it's a combination of things, right? Retention of existing businesses. A lot of existing businesses don't understand or are not familiar with the resources that we offer through AEDP, through Visit Alexandria. So connecting them with those to make sure that they're getting the supports that they need so that they can stay here. Attracting new businesses, right? Looking at our permitting process, making sure that people can get in, start their business quickly because time is money. If you've got 3 months and you can't open your business, you're losing money. So making sure that we're efficient as a city. Part of that, we now have a West End permit center. So businesses could go get their permits done on the West End. Also at City Hall, we've moved our permitting center from the fourth floor, where it's kind of hidden, to the first floor. So people have very easy access to get to it quickly. It was mentioned, but also agree, we have to take advantage of the different sites that we have currently in Alexandria: Potomac Yard, Landmark, the Van Dorn Corridor, and so on, along the Eisenhower Corridor. We have to take advantage of those. Another thing that people don't realize, we also have to look at our zoning. Industrial zones are going away in Alexandria, and the council has been really debating this heavily over the last few years. Now, heavy industrial, yes, I agree. That could leave, we're sunsetting a lot of that. But the light industrial, we still really need to have that. The folks that are your electricians, your plumbers, your carpenters, we need spaces for them because that is part of our commercial tax base. And when we're talking about this tax imbalance, we have to make sure that we're retaining those businesses that are going to continue to give us that commercial tax. Was that 30 seconds or 2 minutes?
30 seconds left, yeah.
And continue to invest money where we know the return is coming back. Visit Alexandria is whenever we're investing in Visit Alexandria, we're getting a lot of money back, a lot of bang for our buck. And AEDP, they're not just looking out for big businesses to bring to the city, they also support all the small businesses because that's where the Small Business Development Center is housed under. So they're helping to make sure that our small businesses are thriving. Here in Alexandria, we take our small businesses very seriously. I personally went canvassing during the pandemic, door to door to businesses to make sure that they knew about the Back to Business grants. A lot of businesses didn't know that. So what do we do? Oh, now it's time? Okay.
So before John goes, so at 30 seconds left, raise the card, lower it, and then when time's up, if you just keep the card raised, that'd be good. All right, John Chapman.
So I think everybody here can throw out ideas about what we need to do, but the proper thing for us to do as a city is pull ourselves together with business, with stakeholders, and plan out what we want to do, what we see our city looking like in the next 10, 20 years, what type of businesses that we think and industry leaders think can be housed here. It's been almost over 14 years since we've done an economic sustainability summit, and I've called for us to do another one. That will allow us to really plan out what needs to change in Alexandria to attract some of the businesses or ideas that we have, what things that we can better embark on in certain parts of the city, what things are going to not work in certain parts of the city. One of the easy kind of ideas is looking at regional sports tourism. I know we have some folks that have fought against the stadium, and that's not what I'm talking about. You see the youngsters that are playing soccer every Saturday and every weekend. We have a lot of them, not just in Alexandria, but in Northern Virginia. Having and attracting them to come and play on some of our fields, taking advantage of that opportunity is a very short-term idea that we can expand upon. Neighboring jurisdictions have done that. Folks in Montgomery County have seen revenues grow from attracting local sports and kids' sports. Some of the ideas that we already have here are focusing on health science. Our high school focuses on health sciences. We have a local community college that focuses on health science. And if you've been watching what's going to happen in the Landmark development, we're going to have a new cancer center built by Inova. We're going to have opportunities in Oakville Triangle as well for other health-related businesses to be here in the city. So why not pull that in and make that a part of who we are? But again, it really comes down to planning, not throwing out ideas, short-term, medium-term, or long-term, but really sitting down as a community and plotting out our path for the next 10 years. That's how we're going to grow our revenues over different streams. That's what I've proposed. I hope we execute that, and I want to be on council to embark on that. One of the things I'll mention as well, during my time on council, I've been focused on growing ADP, saving staff members, attracting new staff members, and growing positions. That has led to us focusing on.
I don't control the mics, but that's a good trick at time. Thank you for those answers. So we're going to have one more question on the economy, and the folks who are going to answer that in this order will go Kirk, Abdel, Kevin, Sarah, and Jacinta. So we're talking about tough fiscal environment here. And like in any budget, there's two sides of that ledger sheet. There's incoming and there's outgoing. So the next council is going to have to make some tough budget choices. So you've got a magic wand. And if we look at the FY25 budget, tell us one thing that you'd add and one thing that you would delete. Start with Kirk.
Yeah, so the budget situation we have in the city is actually going to change significantly over the next few years because we are in the process of collectively organizing our employees. We've signed 3 collective bargaining agreements with staff in the city, our first responders, our police, our fire, and one of our general service employee unions. We have 2 more units inside the city staff that are about to organize, and we expect that the teachers, the schools, are going to organize into 2 units. And when that happens, the entire nature of our budget process is going to change. Before I was on city council, I was on the budget advisory committee for the city. And so I've dealt with these numbers for a long time, and I've seen the impact that recessions and downturns have had on our programs, on our residents and our citizens. And it's going to be a very different thing when we face those sorts of downturns and we don't have the majority of our funds available to adjust because they've been locked away in collective bargaining agreements. Now, I support the collective bargaining, but it definitely changes the way that we're going to have to approach our budgeting. When we look at our budget, what do we spend it on? We spend it on schools, we spend it on services to our residents beyond the staff that we pay. Beyond our we also spend it on construction. We're currently in the largest period of school construction in Alexandria history, and we should be proud of that. We're building beautiful new schools. We opened one yesterday, the Minnie Howard campus. I would like to see us use our collective bargaining agreements, our project labor agreement rules to improve the buildings that we're building in the city, to make them better reflective of our climate priorities, our green building policies, so that we are producing buildings that are going to reduce our carbon and climate impact. And in terms of things that I'd like to see cut, we always need to cut the fat. We need to look at the projects and programs that aren't working in the city, every department, every page of the budget, and trim where we can. That's what we do every single year.
Thank you. Abdel. We're not starting your time. You're good.
There we go. All right. So when I look at budgets, to me, budgets are value statements. And what we spend money on should reflect our value. When I look at budgets, I see more than numbers. I see the people that we're helping, the impact on the lives that we're making in our city. As I mentioned earlier, my own life was transformed by affordable public universities that government fund, by financial aid and the Pell Grants that government fund. Budgets are a way not just to improve the quality of life, but to equalize opportunity in our community and take care of the most vulnerable in our community. And that's how we should approach the budget. That's how I will approach the budget. We need to look at our transportation systems. We need to look at our schools. We need to look at our social services and make sure that those are well funded for our community, because these help the most vulnerable, but also open up opportunities for people to access opportunity, to be able to go to their schools, go to their work, gives businesses workers to go and work, gives us schools, teachers to be able to commute. So the way I'm going to look at the budget is look at data. Every year is going to be different. The needs are going to be different every year. This year, the schools, we needed $11 million more. It may not be the case next year. Probably won't be the case next year. But a different department may need more money and may be facing shortages. We were facing shortages this year. Hopefully that's not the case next year, but maybe another department will be. That's how I will look at it. Look at the data and look at the highest needs and make sure we are lifting the most vulnerable among us as we're looking at the budget. And try as much as we can. If we have to raise taxes, try to take care of those who can't afford a tax increase. Look, I'm a parent. I know how taxes can be burdensome on people. So I'm glad, and shout out to Councilman McPike and this council, because they added a budget amendment that takes care of our seniors who can't afford a tax increase. This is how we need to be approaching our budgets. And next year's, hopefully, is that time or is half there? This time? Okay.
Thank you. Kevin.
Testing, great. All right. Well, so I always say, kind of like what Abdul was just saying, a budget is a moral document. I think one of the most important things that, and this is a big budget item for every single city, is always schools. We have to make sure that we prioritize taking care of our children. Children are the future. I think investments in our students are really important. Fully funding the schools is always super important. Obviously, from that comes taking care of our workforce, our teachers, being able, because we have a huge retention issue in our city, whether it be from the teachers, whether it's firefighters, whether it's police. Alexandria's become a training ground for other neighboring jurisdictions. So we have to make sure that we take care of that. Also investing in workforce development programs for our youth. Programs like trades. I think that one of the things will be good if we had a firefighter academy for our youth, being able to prepare them for those students who maybe not want to go to college and they want to have opportunity to be able to work. That's something that we can do, that they can learn to do, and jump right into a workforce and help support our issue with turnover that we're having amongst our firefighters. Just for me personally, that's something that I've always done as a person. As a father, I have 4 children. I think that's really important because we have to make sure, like I said, take care of our children. Also, I'm an owner of a company, Hoop Life. That's something that I've spent 20 years doing, investing in our youth. It's a basketball services program. We help a lot of young men and young women get a chance to go to college on basketball scholarships, also preparing them for that. And then as the commissioner of AHA, I've spent a lot of my time supporting families and our youth to be able to have the necessary things that they needed, whether it's being able to have backpacks, be able to connect with resources in our cities so that they can actually be provided for. And so this is an issue that I've always led on. It's something that is always really important to me in terms of taking care of our youth. And so that's something that I'll definitely prioritize in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sarah.
All right, well, Charlotte referenced the value of a legal education, and I'm going to now try to show you the value of being a trial lawyer. I'm going to lay out my best argument for you with the evidence of demonstrating why I can prove the budgetary priorities I care about can become a reality. 3 years ago, I talked about climate change, I talked about housing, I talked about transportation, I talked about gun violence prevention. 3 years later, what have I done? We've created the Office of Climate Action. I expanded our Complete Streets teams. These are the staffers, the urban planners who work on our bike and pedestrian infrastructures. In my second year, we expanded our rental inspection program to make sure that the housing that people are already living in, the aging, affordable housing stock, is safe and sanitary. And this year, I worked on public safety. I expanded funding to the Sheriff's Department to make sure that they can take care of the things they need to take care of to keep our city safe. I have demonstrated in each year of the budgets that I've worked on that I will take the priorities I present to you and put them into action, put them into real dollars. Moving forward, I think climate has to continue to inform every budget decision we make, whether it's a housing funding choice, whether it's a transportation choice, whether it's a safety choice. If we don't take care of our environment, if we don't reduce our emissions in housing, in our built environment, in transportation, in our emissions, it's not going to matter in 20 or 30 or 50 years, folks. So if we do those things right, if we spend our dollars wisely, if we create sustainable buildings, if we invest in transportation, if we take care of clean air quality, everything will rise together. And the other thing that will happen, commercial investment will follow. Commercial investment will want to come to a place that has a strong transit system, that has housing for its workers, that has commercial corridors that are viable and attractive and efficient. So if we start from the top down with a vision of a place that is clean, inspiring, safe, and healthy, the other pieces will follow. Businesses will come. People will want to live here. They will spend their dollars here. They will enjoy each other here. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Good. Jacinta.
Thanks, Clark. So, if I had a magic wand, the things that I would do. Come from a family of educators and knew my entire life I would fight for education, for public education. A city is only as strong as its public education system. I would, without a doubt, put more money into public education. We still have crumbling, aging buildings. We have done a great job since I've been on school board for the past 6 years. Like Kirk said, just opening another school yesterday. But we're in a crisis. We have overcrowding within our schools without having another school coming on for many years now. So that needs to be looked at. We need to adjust that to make sure that our kids have safe and new learning environments. And also, I'm going to touch on affordable housing again. Those 1,000 graduates that we graduate from Alexandria City High School each year should be able to go off to college or go into the workforce and be able to live here. It is critical that we continue to focus more on affordable housing. And then, I think, as Sarah was saying, climate sustainability, we're on a great track with that. But climate sustainability affects those that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And we need to make sure that we are doing all that we can do so that everyone thrives within our city. And from a standpoint of cutting, I would do a comprehensive plan and cut things that we can only replace with public-private partnerships, making sure that we do not cut services that are important to everyone in the city, but finding another way to pay for it that might not necessarily come out of the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We made it through round one. We learned that you're tightly spaced on the stage, so my apologies, but we're going to make it through this. The next section, we're going to talk about equity. And if you want to kind of draw a contrast between the Alexandria Democratic Committee and our party and our counterparts, this is a topic that would not be and is not discussed by our counterparts. So let's talk about equity. There's going to be two questions. The first is going to go, this is the order that it will go in. Kevin, to you first, then Jesse, then Kanik, then Jonathan, then Sarah, then Jacinta. And here's the question. Many of our cities, I'll repeat that? Yeah, we're good? That was quick. Okay, sorry. Okay. Many of our city's residents experience racial and socioeconomic disparities that can be eased by good democratic policy. Pick one of the following inequities, or cite a different one if you have one in mind, that affect Alexandrians, and tell us how you address it. Homelessness and eviction, climate disparity, child care deserts, transportation access, or health disparity. Question goes to Kevin first.
All right. So when it comes to equity, I think this is a really important issue because we are living in a time that programs that are built around equity are under attack nationwide. I have a concern because, like I was talking about on one of the podcasts, we're experiencing equity fatigue in our country, and it's not good. It's the bad time to do that because it's now giving people an opportunity and an excuse that really didn't have a heart to be able to help out people who were economically and socially and racially disadvantaged, and to have an excuse to actually not pour in and invest in those communities. One of the biggest things that I see in our city is just having an opportunity to be able to connect with our community and speak to everybody as a whole. This is something that I've spent a lot of my time helping build in our city, whether it was when I was as the commissioner of ARHA and the Citywide Resident Association president, creating resident councils at each location so that we can have an understanding of what the residents in our community needed, whether that was creating Alexandria Minority Business Association, because during COVID we saw that a lot of the minority businesses didn't receive the funding that they needed. And so for me, it's always been about being able to connect our communities, communities of color, to our city services, one, so they can be heard, because obviously in the environment, a lot of times when you grow up in a marginalized community, whether it is consciously or subconsciously, you're taught that what you have to say doesn't matter. And so I've spent my time helping to empower those communities so that they can feel stronger, so they can feel more connected with our city. And that's something that I've always done and something I'll continue to do once elected to council. Thanks.
Thank you. Jesse.
So, Clark, I think every issue that you mentioned is incredibly important, but the one that I want to start with is this notion of childcare deserts, right? That sounds like something that a rural community would struggle with, that you are so far from a childcare center you can't get there. It's a geographic problem. Well, there are multiple census tracts in Alexandria that are defined as childcare deserts. These are places where there are more than 30 students for the available childcare slots. It's a tricky problem because access to childcare not only has economic benefits, right? It's preventing parents from being able to work, but it's also getting young people behind on their educational pathways. So I think opportunities to actually look at how we can grow childcare access in the city are a really compelling thing for us to pursue. And the city has done a lot. During COVID, we had a grant program that was keeping these centers open. The root cause of a lot of this problem is actually growing our early educator workforce. And this is a workforce that disproportionately is Black and brown women. It's often immigrant women. These are jobs that often pay at a rate where we lose employees to Amazon warehouses, right? I'm on the board of Hopkins House, which is a 100-year-old nonprofit right around the corner from where we're sitting right now. And we have struggled to keep our staff because we need this critical form of employment to be higher quality, to be better paid. We have a great partnership with Northern Virginia Community College, where we are actually expanding that pipeline of early educators. There's actually 100 students enrolled in that right now. So it's one of those things where we're not only helping young people, we're not only helping parents go back to work, but we're actually growing the workforce in a way that leads to greater economic opportunity. With the time that I have left, I will briefly touch on, I do think climate equity is something that we often we think of the environmental benefits, but this is a huge equity issue, right? The heat islands in our city are disproportionately in neighborhoods that have less resources, right? There are days where it is 20 degrees hotter in Arlandria than it is in Beverly Hills. We can address this very effectively by planting tree canopy in our neighborhoods in the West End, by adding sort of features that cool neighborhoods, like water features. And make no mistake, these are equity investments. These are not just climate. When we weatherize homes, we're making them healthier and safer, and that is equity effects.
Okay. Thank you. Gannick?
Working in the health industry for a decade now, and working in the school system, we talk about the social determinants of health. So everything that you mentioned is actually all interconnected, and you can't leave one out without talking about the other. One of the things that I'm really proud of in Alexandria is that we've been a leader when it comes to equity, and I'm going to give you a bunch of examples why. The RISE program, first in Virginia to do a guaranteed basic income program. I personally pushed a stipend for bilingual workers that speak more than one language because they're doing more than one job. I pushed to expand our communications department, because to be able to really communicate to our residents in an equitable manner, we need the professionals that are able to do that. Infographics, multimedia, different languages, different ways to engage with people, pop-ups, meeting people where they are, the renaming of streets, of Confederate street names. I had put in a budget memo every single year, and then thanks to the mayor for pushing it, and thank you to the street renaming committee for now pushing that forward. How we do procurement in the city, looking at that, right? How are we doing things internally? What do our job descriptions look like? Collective bargaining. I come from a union household. I know how important it is for good paying jobs. I'm the one that asked and called for a special session so that we could go line by line on our collective bargaining ordinance to make sure that it was strong and as powerful as possible. The RAISE officer, the Race and Social Equity officer, we were one of the first in the region, not the first, but one of the first in the region to have a race and social equity officer, and I pushed to get 2 additional positions in that office because it doesn't make sense to just have one person try and do race and equity for the entire city. She needed people to help her do that work. Frederick Douglass Cemetery, we're investing money there. Stuff around health, neighborhood health was going to lose their space at the Casey Center at Inova, and so we're making sure that they're going to have space there. Child care zoning, we made sure that child care sites could go into more places in the city, and classes could transfer from the high school to Nova. So those are all equity issues that are all interconnected for what we're talking about.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Before I get into the policy...
Jonathan, wait 1 second. It's not on. That's...
Now it's on, John. All right. Before I get into the policy stuff, I just want to acknowledge that my unearned privilege as a white man, and that has allowed me to live the American dream, and it has been easier for me than many. And it's my responsibility because of that to advocate for a more just and equitable Alexandria. And as a city as rich as Alexandria, we have the ability to really address social and economic justice, which is in fact racial justice. And I'm thankful for the folks on this stage, this guy next to me, who's done a lot of work to make sure we center racial equity in everything we do. Housing for all, the small business programs for BIPOC entrepreneurs, the Arise grants, which are great, building housing for people at the lowest end of AMI. And, what I would like to see us do is also try and build wealth into those housing strategies. Home ownership co-ops, limited equity co-ops, shared appreciation loans. And then in terms of the laundry list you gave me, Clark, I do think around climate change and environmental stewardship are really important. We want to make sure it's not just wealthy people who can afford to make sure their homes are efficient and healthful. Jesse mentioned the tree canopy, that's very important. Also programs that rebate lower income people to make sure that their houses, the air is clean. And then the last thing, we got to help people form unions. That's the number one way to raise wages in this society, and it will cure a lot of ills. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
Are we on? Yes. Okay. So I'll pick up on the union comment and say I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm proud to be endorsed by pretty much every union that has put out a survey and has chosen to get involved, and I really appreciate that support from all of those unions, recognizing the work I've been trying to do on council, talking about wages, talking about safe jobs, talking about ending wage theft. This is all part of eliminating inequity in our community. But as Clark, as you went down that list, homelessness, climate, childcare, transportation, health, to me, asking a council member, what can you do to address those things? The thing they all have in common is land use. That is a massive portion of what a council member does. We make land use decisions, and how we choose to use our land impacts the equitable or inequitable impacts of those choices. So we need to, every time we reconsider a project, we need to think about not just the commercial viability, but the climate impacts, not just the housing units created, but who's going to live in those units, not just how tall will the building be, but how many students will be produced, and is the school that they are zoned into have the space to accept them. That is how we will truly tackle equity challenges in the city, is if we don't see them piecemeal, but in every land use decision that we make, every zoning change, every DSUP, SUP decision that we consider, we are thinking about all of those issues that you listed. I'm very proud of the fact that in zoning for housing, that wasn't simply about creating affordable housing, it was about creating accessible, available housing to everybody. It was about addressing past wrongs, past discriminatory zoning decisions, keeping people out of neighborhoods, keeping people out of 34% of our city, 5 square miles of our city. And so it's decisions like that that are about opening up the city, rethinking our uses so that they are as inclusive as possible, not just for certain marginalized communities, but also for people who earn less, for seniors, for people who may be less abled. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacinta.
I keep picking up Sarah's mic. Okay. So thank you so much for this question. It's very important that we focus on socioeconomic disparities, particularly here in Alexandria, where we have a median income well over $100,000 a year. People don't know that there's 58% free and reduced lunch in our schools. They don't see that. The state doesn't see that. Many people don't see that. It is critical, as I run a reading program within public housing here in Alexandria. The kids come up to me every single week and talk about, Ms. Jacinta, we just heard about we might not have our housing in a couple years. What are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to live? And I was in leadership for the Commission for Women for many, many years. And single women with children would come to us because, they were going to be evicted for as little as $200. We would find that money for them, or we would work with them on helping them to get that money to make sure that they are taken care of. So these things are very real in our community that we need to focus on. And then from a standpoint of climate disparity, people of color die sooner here in the city of Alexandria, and that is directly related to climate and climate change. So policy we continue to need to focus on, making sure that we have policy to cover that. And then, of course, raising wages. Our lower income families, instead of, having to work 3 jobs, make sure that we have, wages where they can work 1 job and be able to come home to their families in the evening. So all of these things are critically important as we move forward. And those are the things that I would continue to focus on as a city council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Staying on the topic of equity, the second question, the order, that will go to Jimmy first, then to John, then Abdel, then Kirk, and then Charlotte. So as we mark the 4th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, there are active efforts in Virginia, down in Richmond, and across the U.S. to attack the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies meant to prevent such atrocities. How will you protect Alexandrians from policies and initiatives that would do us harm or undo our DEI work here at home? Question goes to Jimmy first, then John, Abdel, Kirk, and Charlotte.
I think one thing that all Alexandrians can be proud of is no matter what sort of nonsense Richmond has thrown at us or what sort of nonsense has come at us across the Potomac, we have always held our values strong, whether that's protesting in front of City Hall, whether that's suing the governor for trying to attack trans kids in our schools. Whatever it is, we have always held the line on our values, and I think there's no need to inoculate our community against this because we are that vaccine. Every single person in this room who gave up their time tonight to be part of democracy, to be part of moving our city forward, to be part of standing up and saying, this is the way we're going to move forward in an inclusive and equitable way, and for those of you who are uninterested in that, you do not have quarter here. So I think that's really the most important thing for us, is remembering that these are our values, and that if they mean a lawsuit, if they mean a protest, whatever that means, we just have to continue to hold the line the way we've always done as a community. And then it also means, too, that we have to be taking the opportunity to move forward our values. I know we live under the Dillon rule, and that will eventually go away one day. But where there are opportunities for us to advance our values in the face of all of these attacks and all of these efforts to attempt to move us back, that's where we have to make that progress. We need to continue to be the effective lighthouse that is our city mascot and continue to lead the way for other jurisdictions, other communities that don't quite have the same progressive groundswell of support that we do here.
Thank you. John?
So I think throughout the city's history, we've always had attacks on who we are. As in our modern history, we have continued to see, as the question relates, attacks come from parts of the state that do not understand and do not relate to who Alexandria is. And as it was just said, it is really our people that inoculate us from these attacks. During my time on council, I've heard from many of you about how you want Alexandria to continue to be an inclusive community. And I've heard from many of you about how you want local government to stand up and fight for your rights. How you want government to step out on a ladder or on a pedestal and speak out about what we're seeing across our nation. I think one of the biggest things that I have personally taken on is about making sure we have the education about who we are and who we've been as a community. As many of you know, I run a walking tour company that talks about African American history. And from what I've seen, when it comes to many of the issues across the nation, it is lack of education, lack of empathetic education about who someone else is, what their steps are, what they're going through, and how a policy will affect them. And I've seen with my own eyes the spark that comes in somebody's eyes when that light goes on to say, well, I didn't think of something that way, and maybe I need to rethink how this goes. That happens a lot in our community as we continue to educate ourselves. What we do after that is come together and push out the fact that here in Alexandria, we look to be empathetic and inclusive, and look for policies that reflect that, and challenge other communities in our state, in our country, where that needs to be shown as well. And so as we look at our policies, I think my time is up. I'll have to step back.
Abdel?
All right. Well, we did that on the school board. We stood up to Youngkin twice. When he wanted to take away our mask and mandating authority during the height of Omicron and put our vulnerable kids and teachers at risk, we sued him along with 6 or 7 other divisions and stopped that executive order in court and continued to mandate masks. That's how we do it. We have a roadmap. We know what to do when they come at us with that nonsense. The other time when he came after our most vulnerable students, our transgender students, and tried to change the policy, and we said, no, we're continuing on with our policy, current policy because our current policy is legal, and we can see you in court again if you want. We're 1-0 right now. Also, we need to educate our kids. Educate our kids about inclusion, about diversity, and celebrate that diversity. Right now in the schools, we give so many religious holidays off. So everyone understands and start to get to know each other and celebrate together. That makes us stronger. That makes us as a community more willing to stand up to those kind of attacks and live our values. And we also have to have these conversations, honest conversations about historic racism and systematic racism and why some of these disparities that the previous question mentioned exist, and how can we reverse these disparities, whether via policies, via budgets, like I mentioned earlier, and trying to help our most vulnerable and marginalized. Also, include voices that are not at the table. When I was a PTA president, I went to the communities that don't attend PTA meetings and did meetings over there in their communities because they don't even know what a PTA is. I wanted to include them at the table and bring their voices in. We need to continue to do that, and the ADC does a good job of going out and trying to get out the vote and trying to reach communities that don't necessarily vote all the time and do some voter education. And lastly, we need to elect more Democrats, because when we elect more Democrats, they won't be able to do what attack us like that, and we'll be able to stand up.
Thank you. Kirk?
So before the last couple of years, when diversity, equity, and inclusion have been boogeymans from the Republicans, they have been for decades core values of the Democratic Party, core values of the people of the city of Alexandria. And if they come for our core values, we will do what we have done in so many cases before. We will fight back, and we will win. When the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade 2 years ago, the City Council, we didn't take it in the chin. We looked at the rules and the laws that we had control over. We revised our zoning rules regarding health uses to make it easier to protect our existing abortion clinics, to make it easier to open new ones, to make information about these services more available. I was happy to lead the charge to do that and had the full support of my colleagues. When Governor Youngkin came after trans kids, we stood right by the schools and said, no, this is a violation of the values that we hold in Alexandria, and we are not going to allow this to take place here. And we won. We're going to fight in Richmond against any bills that would take away our ability to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, because without those things, we do not have the ability to serve the entirety of our populace. We don't have the ability to form a city staff, city institutions that reflect the needs and values of our community. And in terms of inoculation, we have the Race and Social Equity Office that was created by the previous council, expanded by this council, which I was proud to join the effort to do that. And we need to take that office and not just put them out there on an island and say, okay, you solve it, you get it done. We take the work that they're doing, we integrate it into everything we are doing in the city, every single process, every single decision, every single outreach program that we have, so that if they come and they take away our legal authority to have that office, it's too late. We have integrated into who we are. It is part of our processes and our reflexes, and you cannot pull that away. They will take our commitment. They'll have to pull our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion out of our cold, dead hands. This is who we are as Alexandria, and we're not going to back down on that. And that means standing by the policies we've championed over the last few years that address some of these core issues. Our housing changes, the creation of the Independent Police Review Board, our work on the ARISE program, our investments into education and new schools, our work to address climate, disparate climate impacts. Is that 30 seconds or stop? Okay, thank you.
And Charlotte.
Thank you. So I know that Mr. El-Nubi and Mr. McPike mentioned transgender. So just to put that out there, that if you vote for me on Alexandria City Council, then you will have, by definition, the first transgender person on the council. So there you are, by definition, increasing some diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, so yeah. So I just want to use my remaining time, though, to talk about zoning for housing and address that. Because the premise of zoning for housing, of course, is that if you build higher density in residential zones, then you can build affordable housing there, and that will increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in those zones. And I wanted to take a very clear-eyed look at that, though. So I spoke to Dr. John Huntley, who's an economist at Wharton, This is a PhD from Wharton. He studies the Virginia housing market. He noted, when I sat down with him, that Alexandria has about 900 existing duplexes. That's existing affordable housing. So existing ones that go for about $500,000 median price. Now, most of those duplexes were built before 1963. So if an existing duplex built 50, 60 years ago is $500,000, then how much is a new duplex going to be? I was told that the answer for that, given the high cost of land, the high cost of construction, is about $1.2 million. That a $1.2 million duplex is a permissible use under zoning for housing, and if that gets built, it doesn't move the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I want to take a clear-eyed approach to that. The Samuel Madden Homes, right down the street from where I am, so you've got 66 units of housing built during World War II, and it's owned by ARHA. Of course, they're going to replace that with 400 units of modern, mid-rise, mixed-use development, 1/3 affordable, 1/3 deeply affordable, 1/3 market rate. Now, that's 400 units right there. And that is more than is calculated by the city to be constructed by the zoning for housing reform.
And we have we have 2 rebuttals. Jesse first, then Kenick. Oh, 3. I'm whipping them out. Great, okay. And then Sarah. So Jesse, Kenick, then Sarah.
Thank you, Clark. I appreciate it. And I'm not rebutting anything. Everything that was said in this answer was fantastic. But I want to add something, right? You asked sort of how can we defend against this? And I think a lot of these answers were great about the defense that we can play. We can also play smart offense, right? We can pursue policies that are not on their surface equity policies, but have huge equity effects in the outcomes that we're driving towards, right? This is called targeted universalism. When you design a policy that anyone can take advantage of, but because we have disaggregated data that shows the communities that are going to benefit most from that policy are the communities we're trying to help with our equity outcomes. The best equity policy in Alexandria right now is the free Dash bus. 2/3 of Dash riders are Black and Hispanic. 2/3 of Dash riders are at or below the federal poverty level. That is a service that anyone can use, but it's driving meaningful equity outcomes. The other one, when we invest in our schools, this is an equity thing. 62% of ACPS students are Black or Hispanic. When we invest in our schools, when we make them stronger, when we open these new elementary schools to address capacity issues where we have de facto segregation in our schools, and the crowded schools are our West End schools. They're in the same transfer cluster, so we're sort of moving those students around. So anyway, targeted universalism.
Okay, Kenick.
30 seconds, please. I want to keep my other 30 seconds for the next
all
one. Yeah, Jesse stole a little bit of my thunder, but I was going to bring up Dash 2 and how we purposely changed things. So before, seniors, folks with disabilities, minorities, low income, we were serving those communities at the 20 to 30% percentile. With the new transit vision that we developed, all of those are in the 80% or higher. So when we're talking about equity, it's extremely important, embedding it into the culture of our staff by leading by example on the council and also by doing it in our policies that we're passing. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Okay. And Sarah.
Nothing about single-family zoning exclusive areas served the Black community, served the Hispanic community, served diversity, equity, inclusion. So changing that might do something. We're going to find out together. We're going to dashboard it. We're going to track it. But nothing about the creation and maintenance of those policies served diversity, equity, and inclusion. Secondly, what could also help address those issues is the West End. We have so many untapped small business owners, diverse communities of immigrants and people of color and communities that we have not invested in. The opportunity is endless out there to build more Little Del Reys, to build more Old Towns, to stop just calling it the West End and start having beautiful neighborhood-based, thriving, business-driven communities that actually build wealth amongst marginalized communities, build wealth amongst previously unsupported communities. So it's waiting there. Let's go get it.
Okay. Jonathan? Yep.
Here, I just want you to know, just like top party decks aren't really about open space, eliminating single-family zoning was peeing on my shoes and telling me it's raining progressive or equitable public policy. It was not. And by not requiring developers to have any set-asides, people on this council have convinced themselves that trickle-down economics works in housing policy. It doesn't. We got to put some other people on council who will actually live our progressive values.
All right. Kevin.
Okay, mine just come on time. But I was just going to speak to sort of like what Charlotte was talking about, talk a little bit about Jesse. The biggest thing for me with zoning for housing is, as a black man, understanding the history of redlining, right? I'm for eradicating I understand the fact that there isn't any, it hasn't been any real affordable housing that has come out of zoning for housing with some of the stuff that's going on with Airbnbs and stuff like that. But I am about dismantling all forms of racism, things that were in place. This does give people an opportunity to be able to move in those communities when we think about the history of those things. And that's something that we have to do. The same reason why I'm for the ward stuff, right? It's the same sort of situation where it's something that was created to keep people of color from having an opportunity to get to certain communities, to have an opportunity to hear their voices heard. And so from that standpoint, I do feel like zoning for housing does help with diversity, equity, and inclusion from that degree in terms of it's eradicating a past that's shameful. All right, thanks.
Well, we got the rebuttal cards going. I like it. Kirk, you're up, then Charlotte.
So I think it's important to note that we shouldn't say zoning for housing when all we're talking about is the single-family home zones part, because zoning for housing was a set of 9 different tools designed to create thousands of housing units across the city over the next 10 years and beyond, with 63% of them being created under tools that require the production of affordable homes at committed affordability levels. This is a package that included industrial zone changes, improvements to our CDD, our Coordinated Development District tools, improvements on our office to residential conversion program, and yes, light changes expected to affect about 150 buildings across the 35% of our city, 5 square miles that are single-family homes. And I voted for that because I don't think my neighborhood should be exempted from addressing a crisis that we are facing in terms of housing. We have a luxury in this debate to talk about housing at a 50,000-foot view, looking down and talking about density, impacts. Most people in Alexandria who are talking about affordable housing are talking about the fact that they may not be able to stay in their home when their next rent bill arrives, and that's how we should be addressing this debate.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Thank you. Yes. So it doesn't address the housing crisis if it doesn't get the affordable housing built. And I want to return to that statistic from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. 15,000 units of new housing in Alexandria built over the past 5 years. 5 years, 7%. 7% of that has been affordable. 93% of that has been high-end housing. My point here is this, that developer-driven affordable housing is a contradiction in terms. It is not enough to say that. You must build the housing itself. And I support strategies that get the housing built. For instance, as I was saying, the Samuel Mountain Homes, private-public partnerships have built 400, 500 units, metro adjacent, next to bus lines, next to bus stops. That's my strategy on affordable housing. But again, if it does not get the housing done, then it is just theory. We need to move past that. We need to actually have progress in affordable housing. And 7% over 5 years is not progress.
Okay. Oh, a couple more cards, John, and then Jimmy after John.
I would say first, we already have a strategy about what we're doing to densify our hot properties, and that's going to lead to more affordable housing. I would also say that the 7% that you talk about is a state issue. Any locality around the state is going to bring back paltry numbers because it's been a state issue. Folks that have served on council know this. We've pushed back against the state. We've talked about trying to increase set-aside housing. We always, and my council members who have served with me know that I always point to DC and say they have double digits set aside for any project that comes. Virginia law does not allow us to do that. And so we go hat in hand trying to talk to developers and trying to deal with them about how much affordability that we have. Because, again, we're in a Dillon Rule state. The state does not give us the power to uniquely set aside housing. I think folks that are coming on council need to know that and understand that is something that cripples us. I came on the council as a clear-eyed activist hoping to get more affordable housing, but was met with what state law is. We can continue and we will continue to lobby against state law to change that, but we need to understand that is what state law says.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Real quick, regardless of whether zoning for housing is advancing or not, we were going to get denser. And I think one of the things that we have to be cognizant of as we grow is that master planning. How are we going to move everyone? Where are the students going to go? Do we have enough capacity at our hospital? Do we need more buses in the Dash fleet? Do we need more bus stops? I think that's something also that we need to be very cognizant of is as we are talking about bringing more housing, it is one thing for us to bring it here, but if folks are not sort of connected to the rest of the city with that housing and we aren't planning for them, then we're going to be in a sort of a similar place to where we are now, where we've got budget challenges and we've got a lot of communities that have a lot of need. And if we aren't planning for this housing as it is coming, we're going to be in a bad place on all of it.
Thank you. Any other cards? Good? Oh, okay. There are a couple left, right? And half of one left. So good. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'm impressed that this is your 11th one of these forums. 11. All right, because I'm looking through trying to figure out when I'm not going to keep standing up on this stage. I'm like, man, they've done 11 of these things? That's impressive. It is fitting, though, that the 11th and final forum is brought to you by the Alexandria Democratic Committee, because these candidates are seeking the Democratic nomination for office. They could have sought the Republican nomination. They could have run as independents. They have chosen to seek the Democratic nomination for City Council. And as such, the winners of the primary will become leaders of Alexandria's Democratic Party. What qualifies you to lead our party, and how will you support democratic efforts and values this year and in future election years beyond? So the question will go, here's the order that question will go to, and I can repeat it. We'll go to Charlotte first, then Kirk, then Kevin, then Jesse, Sarah, Jonathan, Jimmy, John, Jacinta, Abdel, and Kanik. So what qualifies you to lead our party, and how will you support democratic efforts and values in 2024 and beyond? Charlotte?
Thank you. It's a very good question. So at the beginning of the race, I sat down with State Senator Danica Rome. So State Senator Danica Rome has a standing policy to sit down with any candidate for any local office. She's very generous about her time. So we spoke for some time, and of course, the fact that I'm transgender came up in that conversation. So, and I have made it a policy not to talk about that in most cases. When I'm going out door to door, I talk about, I talk about the economy, I talk about housing, I talk about residential tax rates, I talk about commercial development, all these things, but not about being transgender. But this is ADC, and ADC is my safe space. It's my home, it's my family, so I can talk more openly about that. So I think that the starkest difference between our party and the other party out there that shall remain unnamed is that we are the big tent. We welcome all comers. Transgender is a big tent. You've got transgender, you've got non-binary, you've got genderqueer, gender fluid, you've got agender, you have all these different beautiful mosaic of different lives within it, and they are all welcome within the Democratic Party. So I just want to return to saying that Danica Rome should not be the only transgender person elected to any office in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. So she's been that, I think, since 2016. So I would like to join her and, send a message to all those trans kids out there that, hey, you're transgender. You can do whatever you want to do. Anything is within your possibility. Anything is with your dreams. So I would be absolutely honored to represent the Democratic Party here in Alexandria as its first transgender person ever elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirk.
Thank you. Y'all are part of the oldest family I have in Alexandria. One of the first things I did when I moved here 14 years ago to run Adam Evans' campaign for the Virginia Senate was I joined the ADC. And I've been out there with you ever since, knocking doors, raising money, working for candidates, trying to move the ball forward on our progressive values. 3 years ago, you gave me the incredible honor of electing me to our city council, and I hope that I've made you proud. I've hoped that I've the work that we have done together has made you proud. Because I understand that leading a Democratic Party doesn't mean you stand in front of the crowd and say, okay, follow me. It means you get in the middle of the crowd and say, what can we do together? And let's look at what we've done together. On housing, on climate, on infrastructure and transit, we have built and approved thousands of new affordable housing units across the city, approved and built many of them, and secured millions of dollars more funding to help bring them to fruition. We've created the Office of Climate Action. We've taken important steps to address the flooding that impacts so many of our neighborhoods. We've addressed our infrastructure challenges, our transit challenges, by supporting WMATA through some difficult fiscal times, and by making sure that we maintain our free Dash bus service. These are accomplishments that make us a leader in our region, and they exist because you all do the work of making it possible for folks like us to be up on the stage and get them done. I look forward to hopefully winning renomination, but even if I don't, being out there this November, knocking doors to make sure that we send Democrats to Congress from Virginia. We get rid of Kiggins and send a new Democrat in her place. That we re-elect Tim Kaine. That the next president of the United States is not someone who today was convicted of 34 felonies. Because that's not going to be allowed under our values. That's not something we're going to stand for. So I think that's what I've done. That's who I am. I've been working in the Democratic Party for the last decade and a half, working with you to advance the values we care about. You've given me an opportunity to do that on the council. I'm so happy to have achieved many things under that, and I hope to continue doing so again.
Testing one, okay. So this it's a simple answer for me. I'm a fighter for the people, and I'm a fighter for our shared values as Alexandrians. For over a decade, I've organized around our shared values as Alexandria and got things done, whether that's affordable housing, serving as a commissioner on Affordable Housing Board, Alexandria Redevelopment Housing Authority, getting residents to come and personally testifying for projects to get through, galvanizing and getting other residents together to come and testify for projects. I've demonstrated ability to support for affordable housing, organizing around diversity, equity, inclusion. I've organized with everything from housing residents to small business owners in our city to churches, and also fighting for our working class folks. Personally, like I said, I'm endorsed by Nova Labor, the firefighters union, because of my support for our firefighters during their labor negotiations. I actually attended those negotiations personally. I talked to the fire chief personally, just to get things done and make sure things can get done around making sure that our workforce is taken care of. And so for me, I've demonstrated an ability to get things done around our shared values, to bring people together, to get things done around our shared values as Alexandrians. And I'm looking to do more of that once elected to council. Thanks.
Thank you. Jesse?
So, Clark, I think I'm qualified to lead because I have a long track record of showing up for Alexandria. I've chaired the city's budget commission, I've served on the Park and Rec Commission, I've served on the small area planning groups for both Old Town North and the Braddock neighborhood. I'm on the board of the Dash Bus system. I'm on the board of the Scholarship Fund. I'm telling you all this not because it's evidence that I don't like being in my home in the evening, but it's because I like to show up for people. It matters to me. My parents raised me to be somebody that gets involved in their community. When you see a place that is thriving, when you see a place that's great, it's not staying that way out of inertia. It's not staying that way because the status quo is working. It's staying that way because lots of people are putting in invisible labor behind the scenes to make that place great. So I have shown up for Alexandria, and I've stayed involved in people's lives. I've built meaningful relationships as I've done all this work across the city because I think these issues mattered. I have written about things and programs that don't directly benefit me, but I think they're wonderful and I want people to know about them. I've testified behalf on projects that I'm not going to be a part of because I think they matter. I think they tell the story of the city that we need to be. You know, Kirk put this beautifully earlier that, you know, the Democratic Party, the ideas that we embody are ideas that matter, right? They're trying to make people's lives better. They're trying to raise the general commonwealth of our communities. And, you know, we need to show up for those ideas. It also starts, though, with, like, we have to show we can govern, right? I think a big thing that we can do, particularly at the local level, is show people that government works, right? It's not just about the ideas themselves, it's the execution. People notice when a park doesn't get mowed for 2 weeks. People notice when the sidewalk in front of their house is jacked up and people are falling over. People notice when, you know, you see a roundabout put into Warwick Village that's like the size of this table here, right? So I think executing on little things matters. It actually shows people that government government can be in your life and make a difference. And when you start with doing the little things well, you can build on that and do a bigger thing. And you can build on that and do a bigger thing. So I'm someone that wants to show up and actually take the little things that local government does seriously and get them right so that we can actually deliver on the bigger things that make people's lives better.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm going to ask for your vote and demonstrate why I deserve to lead the party by telling you my Alexandria Democratic Party story, which is one of the first things I did when I moved to Alexandria was come to a meeting. And I was sitting in the little auditorium seats at Minnie Howard, and this woman leans over and says, "Hi, I'm the mayor, Allison." And I thought, gee, I could get used to this place, if this is the kind of place it is. And within 6 months of my first Alexandria Democratic Committee meeting, I was the precinct chair at Lyles Crouch, standing outside. Why always in the rain, but always in the rain on election day, supporting that. And then I grew that. I began volunteering with candidate after candidate every year, every primary, and that's how I got to know the city on the doors years before I was ever a candidate. Then, while I was phone banking for Ralph Northam, I looked down the table and I saw these lovely women in red shirts all together. And I said, "Oh, are you guys with Moms Demand Action? I love what you do." And they said, "Oh, well, you should join us." And I said, "Well, I don't have children." And they said, No, we're mothers and others." And I was all in then. And before I knew it, I was the local event lead for Moms Demand Action for years, helping to put together Wear Orange in Market Square. And again, knocking doors of businesses, tabling at the farmers markets. That is how I came to know all of you. That is how I came to know this city, through service, as a precinct captain, as a volunteer, as the local event lead for Moms Demand Action. And that is how I came to be asked to run. I think that's powerful. So many women have to be asked to run, and I ultimately was by other women. And so I ask you to continue to place your faith in me, that I will continue showing up for you, whether it's over a small sidewalk on Polk Avenue, or 2 homes maybe being built on Oakland Place, or a massive development in Potomac Yard. I will meet you at coffee shops. I will meet you at City Hall. I will meet you outside the metro station, as I have demonstrated that I will do over these last 3 years. That is why I'm qualified to lead, because I have demonstrated I will repeatedly listen and show up. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Well, many of you know I was not planning to be here today as a candidate, but my community was not being represented, so I stood up. And I also was not planning to be a part of party leadership. I've been part of the ADC for years, walked lots of precincts, worked on elections, but I've not been that involved. But just as I have made a commitment to this city by running for city council, running in the Democratic primary means a lot. It means a serious commitment to this party and to our values. And I've worked to elect Democrats across the country and in Virginia and in this room. I know how to do this. I will put my energy and my skill into electing more Democrats so we can make big changes in Alexandria. This is going to sound a little weird. Just hear me out. I started this campaign 2 months ago, with no help from any institutional or establishment person, and I got a campaign that's pretty good, right? I've raised decent money, I've got people who are helping me. I know how to do this, and if I am elected, it's going to be a benefit to this party in this city for years to come, because I'm going to bring more people in, different people to take some of the load off of folks, and we're going to have a new revenue source for this city. And I am going to be out of the gate working on revenue in Richmond. I'm going to be organizing other Democrats at the local level to be ready to advocate for progressive taxation in Richmond when, not if, but when we win the governor's race in 2025. And we'll have Senator Louise Lucas standing by us, because she's endorsed me in this race, because she knows I'm going to stand up as a progressive leader and for Alexandria. So, listen, I'm in this race to win. And if I do, we're going to get to work electing more Democrats and ultimately have huge gains in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Thank you. I'm standing in front of you tonight and asking for your vote to lead not only our city but our Democratic Party because my experience in this city and the whole Commonwealth of Virginia have frankly been the party. When I started at William & Mary, the first two organizations I joined were the Young Dems and the IR Club. Now, my RA thought that was really funny, and catch me afterwards and I'll tell you the rest of that story. But that was what it was, because despite having been from Pennsylvania, I knew I now lived in Virginia and I had to make an impact. I had to get involved in politics. That was also a really great year to be a Democrat in Virginia because Jim Webb flipped that Senate seat. First time ever. So that's how I got involved in the city, and that my involvement in the Young Dems is also what landed me in Alexandria when I was looking for a job. I knew two people from the Young Dems that were involved in ADC. When I called them looking for a place, they suggested Fox Chase Apartments, joined there, and then the first thing I did was went to an ADC meeting and was introduced to Dr. Pepper, who was the precinct captain for Bethel at the time. But from that, I have stayed involved. I got involved in the city's Alexandria Collins Sister City Committee, have spent the last 11 years on the city's Traffic and Parking Board, was the Louds Crouch Precinct Captain, was the West End Deputy Precinct Captain for Operations. I've served the state as the State Young Dems President, and in that year, in 2017, we swept the statewide offices and flipped 15 seats in the State House because my Young Dems, under my leadership, knocked 121,000 doors across the Commonwealth. We continue to be involved. I'm the Vice Chair of the LGBT Democrats of Virginia, so leadership within the Democratic Party is not something new to me, and I hope to have your support on June 18th to continue leading our city and our party forward. Thanks.
Thank you. John?
Well, you've given me the opportunity to lead this party for the last 4 terms, and I'm asking for a 5th. Not because I just want a 5th, but I want to continue to lead and help grow our party. My story is pretty simple. About 19 years ago, I walked into a Young Dems Democratic Party meeting for Young Dems and met this guy. Ever since then, I've been involved in the party. As a Young Dem, as a president of the Alexandria Young Dems, as a national committee man at the state level, I have been involved. I've been here involved locally as the Democratic Party outreach worker and outreach chair with Jacinta at a time where we had a great time learning under great leadership. We continue to have great leadership. And I continue to be involved. But I think my role is helping the next generation of our party grow. Continuing to work with Young Democrats, continuing to work with, I think, what I call Democratic adjacent organizations. I've been involved with the Urban League and NAACP as well, and helping to grow those organizations too. Because as we know, those organizations have been instrumental in helping communities of color, frankly, get very involved in progressive politics. And so it's not just about the ADC, it's about growing our community, because that's what my journey has been. As I look out amongst you, I see neighbors, I see friends who have seen me grow in this position. And it's about building my community, my hometown. It's a part of who we are as Alexandrians. We want to be progressive. We want to be involved with each other in helping to grow our community, not just our community neighborhood block, but grow our city. And so continuing to lead this party, to invite others who are new to our city to be involved in the ADC, be involved in activities where we can show our progressive values. That's the leadership I want to continue to bring as I outreach to you and encourage you to outreach to your neighbors as well.
Thank you. Jacinta?
Thank you. 21 years ago, I made the best decision of my life to move to Alexandria. And one of those reasons, or the main reason, was because Alexandria's democratic values are my democratic values. I came up on a Saturday in 2001, and on that Monday, I was at an ADC meeting. I quickly got involved, helping to revitalize, with John, like John said, with the Young Dems and with Clark as well, and making sure that we elect strong Dems. I have been doing that for 21 years. I will continue to do that for 21 more years, if not longer. But with all of that experience, and also chair of volunteer coordination as well, those progressive values, such as public education, protecting our kids, protecting our students, protecting our teachers, making sure that we live up to those values for public education, have been important to me my whole life, but I have fought for that for these 21 years in Alexandria. It is critical that we continue to maintain, that we elect strong leaders that are ready on day one to make sure we uphold those democratic values. I am ready to do that on day one, and I ask for your vote on, if not now, on June 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdel?
Thank you. What qualifies me is my track record on the school board, on the Alexandria Democratic Committee leadership, and my community leadership roles. I also believe my lived experiences enable me to relate to many of the struggles that many Alexandrians are facing. I grew up in a different Alexandria, Egypt, under a dictatorship, where quality of life is poor and opportunities are few. I left seeking opportunities, worked minimum wage jobs, put myself through college, and graduated debt-free with an engineering degree because of good, accessible educational policies. I experienced the promise of what America can deliver, and when that promise was under attack in 2016, when Trump was elected, I got involved. I didn't stay on the sidelines. I was scared for our democracy, and I was scared for my kids and their future in this country, the only country that they know. I became a precinct captain with the ADC. I got on the executive committee. I helped get Democrats elected up and down the ballot. I was driving to Loudoun County in 2018 to get Jennifer Wexton elected and kick Comstock out every single weekend. And then I was asked to run for office. I never thought I could run for office. I was like, did you hear my accent? Have you heard my name before? But I did it. As an elected official, I've been a voice for the community. I made sure that I listened, and we increased teacher pay. We gave them collective bargaining rights. We added mental health supports. We made school zones safer around our schools by doing 15-mile-an-hour school zones. And I served the community as PTA president. I was a grassroots activist with Grassroots Alexandria. We worked on the police data transparency piece. I was advocating for that as grassroots activist. I was advocating for workers' rights with the Alexandria Democratic Labor Caucus with Tim and other people. And I'm proud to have been endorsed by 5 labor unions to this point in the campaign. And as a party, we need to continue our commitment to working people, to the most vulnerable among us. I'll use my 1 minute to continue.
Well done.
Because our democracy depends on us showing up every single day for those who need us. And as an engineer who's trained to solve problems, we can build trust in government and democracy by implementing those policies that help people and uplift people. And when we do that, people will see how good governance can really transform lives and continue to believe in democracy. So I ask for your vote by June 18th. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kenneth?
So I want to start off by saying thank you to the Alexandria Democratic Committee for putting this together. It's been an excellent debate. It's been a long run. I also want to thank all of you for coming out for what's going to be like 2 hours on a Thursday night, and you could have been a lot of other places, but you chose to be here. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for paying attention and for caring. I think my track record kind of speaks for itself. From before I was on council to my time on council. To learn more about me before my time on council, you could go to my website, cannockforcouncil.com. If you want to see more about what I've been doing on council, you could go to my social media sites, which is at Cannock for Council. We're on the Gram, Facebook, Twitter, the whole deal. And you know, one of the reasons that I ran is that I felt that there was this big disconnect between policymakers and what actually happens to families and people on the ground. And so when I ran the first time, part of the whole reason that I ran was to try and help expand the electorate. It's not lost on me that, one, I'm the first Latino ever elected to the city of Alexandria at any position, and two, I'm one of about 18 Latino elected officials in the entire Commonwealth, which has over 3,000 elected officials. And so I've made it a priority for myself to make sure that I'm trying to expand the electorate, doing my part. I know you guys don't probably watch Univision or Telemundo, but during the pandemic, I was on there like once a week. Right now, I'm on there probably every other month, maybe once a quarter, talking about the importance of voting, talking about the importance of being civically engaged, making that message heard, not just here in Alexandria, but across the entire Commonwealth and across the DMV. And what people need to realize, and I think Clark mentioned this, when Democrats put in policies, people like them. People want to see them keep on happening. So when we vote, okay, come on, guys. There's a room of Democrats. Come on, when we vote, there it is. So I'm humbly asking for your vote on June 18th or to go early vote. Remember, early vote starts, has already started. June 8th, expanded early vote starts. And thank you so much for being here.
I think that's a pretty good note to end on. You guys would agree? Let's give them a round of applause. And whoever you vote for, remember to vote and bring some friends. Thank you all for coming out tonight.